Well, hooray and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast, for once commentating on an episode that has not been seen for many years. So make sure you've availed yourself of it before you listen to this, for there will be spoilers. But what happy times and places we're in indeed. Before we begin this undreamed of episode of Happy Times and Places, undreamed of and about a nightmare, you're going to hear from your two guests. We have two special guests for this episode and for the next episode of Happy Times and Places, which will take us on a trip to the Devil's Planet. I would just like to let you know that I did not pay the contributors to say anything nice that they might say about me. I've heard the introductions just to make sure the files worked and to see how they were laid out. And as a result, I caught one particular guest eulogizing me to an extent that has made me slightly bashful. Not bashful enough to edit it out, but that's because he's painted such a lovely picture of the day I didn't want to interrupt it. But I am aware that it's slightly strange putting out something where somebody says that I, the person whose podcast it is good at things. That's not usually what it's about. But anyway, so it is with humility that I allow that tape that you're about to hear go out unblemished. So here are your two guests, and then let's get on with allowing the nightmare to unfold.
Greetings, Toby. It's Tim Burrows here from the Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast, a podcast which looks at stories which have missing episodes or have had missing episodes returned, and we do a lovely deep dive into each and every story, give it a review, and then talk about how episodes came back or why episodes haven't come back, or indeed we try and work out what chance a particular story has of ever being complete. This is a game which has been turned on its head, of course, with the recent discourse around cutting copies. We also do interviews, so I've actually interviewed Film is Fabulous 3 times, the last time being when they actually found some Doctor Who, so you can check out the history there from conception to finding a missing Doctor Who. And I've also interviewed various missing episode hunters. So if you want to check out the podcast, just Google it. Doctor Who Missing Episodes podcast. It's on all the podcatchers. It's on YouTube. It's very easy to find. And you'd be very welcome to join us on our journey. I was one of the very fortunate handful of people who got to share that magical day with yourself a few weeks ago in Leicester, where not only did we get to watch the episodes on the big screen, but we got to share the moment of you twice deceiving Peter Purvis to tell him that these 2 episodes had been recovered, and that's certainly the best experience I've ever had as a Doctor Who fan, and I will treasure that day for the rest of my life. And how good are Film is Fabulous? They are remarkable. They're not Doctor Who fans, they're not even TV fans, but because they've got their mission to save film collections, they're handing stuff over as and when they find it. And I can just hopefully encourage everyone to send them a £5 or a £10 or set up a regular payment. And hopefully that will enable them to find more TV treasures in the years to come. And what I mean by that is I hope they find the rest of Dalek's Master Plan next week, because 1, it's got to be out there, and 2, these 2 episodes are so good, so very good, and they completely bed in and give context to the entire 12-parter or 13-parter.
5-0 Crocker to Toby Haydoke. Hello, Toby. Thank you very much indeed for the lovely surprise to be invited onto Happy Times and Places to talk about another just mind-blowing surprise. The return of 2 long-lost missing episode classics. My name's Oliver Crocker. I'm a TV historian and ghostwriter. As a ghostwriter, I have written 3 memoirs. New one coming out is called 20th Century Cop, and it's the true crime memoir of former Flying Squad detective Barry Appleton, who worked on some extraordinary cases, including going undercover to investigate the assassination of Martin Luther King. So that was a real privilege to step into his world. As a TV historian, I've spent the last 9 years researching The Bill for an ongoing podcast called The Bill Podcast, where I've interviewed hundreds of cast and crew about the long-running police series. I've also written 2 witness statements making the Bill books, and I'm probably best known, if I am known at all, for writing All Memories Great and Small, the guidebook to the BBC version of All Creatures Great and Small. 75 cast and crew interviews, including Peter Davison, who I cannot tell you how generous he was with his time. Absolute legend. A big reason I do what I do is because Toby has inspired me for years, and we actually met when I was working as a researcher on This Morning. We were doing a series called TV Plots, where we were looking at gardens from ITV series. It was basically an excuse to take Dermot Gavin to some really nice locations and use a load of free archive. My producer said, "What we need is a TV guru." I said, "I know just the man." And so that was the first time I met Toby, who came all the way up to Portmeirion to do probably a 15-minute interview with Dermot Gavin, who was actually dressed in a replica Patrick McGowan number 6 costume. And then we got Toby back to do Inspector Morse, Blenheim Palace, on a really wet and miserable day. I'll never forget, I went to meet Toby at the gate, and we went back on a little golf buggy, and he said, "I've just met someone." And he'd recently met Sheryl Lee, and I'll never forget how happy you were. So yeah, that was 2013, which was the last time I saw Toby in person. We've exchanged countless emails and messages in between, and then we got to fast forward to 2026 to March the 11th at the Phoenix Arts Centre in Leicester for a very, very special day. As I say that out loud, having seen you in 2013 and 2026, considering those are also the year of missing episode returns, I think I need to make sure I see you every year now. This was the most extraordinary day, and you will see in Toby's brilliant behind the scenes, which if you're listening to this when it goes out publicly, join his Patreon. Honestly, there's so much stuff on there, but to see behind the scenes of that special day, everyone treated Peter Purvis like a king, and he deserved it. To actually stand there and witness, and I did say, I'm going to give Peter a round of applause when he walks in, because he's a national treasure. I just felt compelled. I thought I didn't want him to walk into silence. Obviously, he was being guided in by Toby, who then had to spring, the surprise reveal. And between us, we all discussed and said, well, why don't we hold back for a second? So give him another surprise, which for poor Toby having to deliver this was a second lie, because he's a very decent human being. That was, I'm sure, at the forefront of his mind, that he didn't want to lie to Peter again. But the reaction, to be in that cinema and witness Peter's reaction live to all this news, it still makes me a bit weepy, to be honest, because it was so emotional, seeing how moved he was. I just thought he'd be thrilled, but none of us could have predicted what it meant to him, especially as he'd been poorly. The man who left Leicester that day, very, very moving indeed. So yeah, we're in the screening and we're watching, and there's this pinch me moment. There's only 10 of us in this cinema, including the projectionist, because BBC News set up to film Peter's reaction to the episodes. That was the whole point of their coverage. And so they said, we've reserved this row for Peter. And so the rest of us started sort of like piling back up the stairs. And Peter turned around and said, where's Toby? I want you here, mate. I thought it was a beautiful gesture. It sums up their genuine friendship. And I can assure you, everyone listening to this, the first thing Peter did when he left the cinema after seeing these 2 episodes was hug Toby and thank Toby. It was just beautiful. And I'll say this as well. What you guys don't see is the focus, the concentration that Toby puts into his work. We all get the benefit of the final results. We all enjoy the content. We all know he's meticulous in his research and preparation. But the focus, he was just 100% there for Peter. And when you think how many people who could have made that day about themselves, not Toby Haydock, my respect is off the chart. I first was aware of the missing episodes in 1998. I got into Doctor Who in 1996 with the Paul McGann movie. So when the missing years came out, that was my introduction to the notion that there were missing Doctor Whos. But because it wasn't until all the VHSs came out that I saw everything there was to see anyway. And then during that time, I remember when Day of Armageddon came back, I found out on teletext, Doctor Who episode found. It was like, oh, that's nice, because I hadn't seen everything then. And it wasn't really until Enemy and Web came back in 2013, and I realised I'd never actually listened to the soundtrack of Enemy of the World. I just thought, you're a bad fan. Why haven't you actually listened to this soundtrack? And so then I went and educated myself, and I listened to all the soundtracks. And then naturally, over the years that followed and all the rumours, you then just start studying the missing episodes in such a granular way, imagining what episodes that didn't have telesnaps would look like. And so to be in the cinema watching them in the presence of Peter Purves, and with 3 Doctor Who historians whose work I have followed for years and admire greatly, it was an overwhelming day for me. I was sat on the edge of my seat in the cinema, just kept on saying, wow, wow, oh wow. I didn't stop wowing, to the point where a few minutes into The Nightmare Begins, I kind of had to pinch myself to think, God, I'm watching a missing episode. It was like this delayed reaction. It was extraordinary. So, sorry, Toby, long-winded introduction over. What is my favourite thing about The Nightmare Begins? I'll leave a slight pause in case you're wanting to guess.
So, thanks to Tim and to Oliver. Just a word about those two gentlemen. Tim's podcast about missing episodes is a work of great scholarship and fastidious endeavour. I absolutely love listening to them. I've listened to each instalment more than once. They're full of informed opinion, excellent detective work, and they're just put together really, really well. They've always got very, very good guests, but are knitted together by Tim, who has also played a very important role in liaising with Film is Fabulous and making sure that they understand the world of Doctor Who. And if it hadn't been for Tim, I wouldn't have been introduced to John, and I wouldn't have had the involvement I've had with the return of these 2 missing episodes, The Nightmare Begins and Devil's Planet. I talk about those over on my Patreon, and I'm sure I'll give you some stories here as well. So welcome. These are being released into the wild pretty much hot on the heels of when they're released on Patreon. That doesn't normally happen. Patreon is usually really far ahead, but I figured there's going to be a lot of Daleks master plan in the air, so I may as well take advantage of the fact that I can see the episodes before they come on iPlayer. So let's get my commentaries in place and ready to go. So this one will come out 25 minutes after it's hit iPlayer. So just a reminder, don't be listening to this commentary. I have one that I did as a separate episode of Happy Times and Places where I couldn't see the pictures. I was just watching a reconstruction. But this commentary you're about to listen to will be done watching the, albeit unrestored, as it came off the press, episode The Nightmare Begins, which I know that everybody will be thrilled to be watching when it is released on iPlayer at 6 a.m. on Good Friday. I'm recording this the day before, so getting my piece in nice and early. Oliver Crocker, I need to talk about him as well. What a lovely, enthusiastic guy. He did get me a stint on this morning, of all places, as the TV guru. I did a few appearances there. It's a very odd career that I've had, isn't it? A strange mosaic of very unexpected and sometimes unsought for things. But I take it all in my stride and enjoy it. And Oliver's right. I hadn't realised that. We see each other every year a missing episode comes back. So we're gonna have supper every January from now on, Oliver. But what an enthusiastic and unfailingly helpful man, and I'm flattered and humbled by his kind words, and all his Bill podcast's brilliant, his books are great, but what I like most about Oliver is just that he's got this unfettered enthusiasm and appreciation of the work of other people, and he doesn't cease to tell them that. So if you're somebody like me who's prone to the black clouds looming, somebody like Oliver sending an enthusiastic or helpful email or message or note or whatever is always a day brightener. So Oliver, Tim, Gavin Rymil and I were those who were allowed to gather with Peter Purvis. Oliver's downplayed his role slightly. It was his idea to give a round of applause to Peter, which was a great way to herald him through the door and I think break the ice a little bit and, of course, give him the credit that he deserves. But it was also Oliver. It wasn't our idea. We didn't have a chat. Oliver said, because the BBC had just wanted to get Peter in and to play the episode and to catch Peter's reaction going, oh, it's not an episode of The Chase as I thought. It's an episode of the Daleks Master Plan. But I said we can't guarantee that. He might not know one Doctor Who story from another, especially after a 3-hour journey, and he's seen Day of Armageddon, so even if he thinks it's a Daleks Master Plan episode, he won't be across exactly which episodes are missing and when he last saw them, because he might not have seen Day of Armageddon since he did the commentary on that 22 years ago. So he does need a little bit of sort of scene setting for a number of reasons, and you don't want it to be a damp squib where we have to then press pause and go, actually, this is missing. So I said, no, we need to break it to him, and we'll get that on camera, and then you can film him watching it, so you get 2 money shots, as it were. And then Oliver said, well, no, why don't you tell him about one episode, so he gets that surprise, then he watches it, and we film him after that and get his reaction, and then we tell him about the second episode, so then he gets the second episode being the third episode, and then he gets 2 surprises, and you get another money shot, as it were. And that's what we did, and it was Oliver's idea, and it was the making of the day. So that is what happened when Tim, myself, Oliver, Gavin Rymil were invited by John Franklin of Film is Fabulous to be there to witness Peter Purvis watching The Nightmare Begins and Devil's Planet for the first time. And now I am going to watch. I mean, if at the beginning of this year you'd said to me, you are going to be talking about watching The Nightmare Begins, the actual episode, and doing a podcast about it, but actually just watching it and having the ocular proof, I wouldn't have believed you. And it's not even an episode that had been particularly rumoured, I don't think, either. But it was the first episode that John Franklin told me about when he was sorting through this collector's pile, and obviously I was being primed in order to be able to help with the identification and then help with getting Peter Purvis to Leicester, and I concocted a story in order to get him there. So it's all been a big operation. I've barely slept since because, this missing episode, Malark, is the gift that keeps on giving. We've had to be stepping on rumours, we've had to be negotiating the particular machinery of the BBC, we've been having to sort out people here, do things there with an eye to Riverside and getting things, and I mean, not a day has gone by since when I haven't done at least a couple of hours of work on this. So I want him to find more missing episodes, but can I have a lie down first? Anyway, let's not get into other fines. And just for the record, as far as I am aware, Film is Fabulous do not have any more missing episodes of Doctor Who. They're hopeful that some are out there, but we have absolutely no proof that any are. Just to avoid any speculation or anybody seeking something in my semantic construction that might be a code that something else, that I know of something else. If I did know of something else, I wouldn't be dropping coded bombs. I promise you that. But the fact is, I don't. So anyway, Oh, this is going to be exciting, isn't it? I've scrolled through the countdown. My copy has the countdown. That was very exciting. And I'm now going to press play on The Nightmare Begins, which hopefully you've watched relatively recently. And here is now my commentary on it, which has facts and observations as usual. But also I will choose my favourite thing about it, and then we will go back to Tim and Oliver and hear what their favourite things about this episode are, as is the protocol in a Happy Times and Places podcast. But for the first time ever, let's do it. Let's watch an episode that I've done before, but I've done before when none of us could see it, and now we can. What a time to be alive. So, let's see The Nightmare in all its glory in 3, 2, 1. So I'm watching a sort of scratchy, filmy copy. And, I'm a great admirer of Vidfire, and I'm a great friend of the restoration team, and think the work that they've done is groundbreaking and brilliant. But I feel rather fortunate that I've got to see this warts and all. I mean, it's excellent quality. That was the first thing. It was clear that this has not been watched. There's a few scratches, and obviously the film dirt and all of that sort of stuff. And that's how I first saw bootleg Doctor Who, But actually the contrast and the quality of the picture and everything is absolutely magnificent. So it's going to be a bit of a treat for me tomorrow to be able to see the episodes restored, because I haven't watched any of the clips online or anything. A part of me slightly wishes there hadn't been quite so much put online. I wish we could have kept Lisanne and Roald a secret. But anyway, here was the first surprise: a topless Peter Purvis, one of the great mysteries. I saw Jack Rayner retweet or whatever her article that she'd written 20 years ago, or part of an article about mysteries that we still have in Doctor Who, and one of them is, when does Peter Purvis put his natty corduroy jacket, his cocoa corduroy, ribbed for your extra pleasure, on during Dalek's Master Plan? Because he has it on in episode 2, but there doesn't seem to be an opportunity for him to put it on in episode 1, where I think the received wisdom was that he was still in his Trojan War gear from the Mythmakers, where he received the wound that we see him have. But the truth is, he's got changed between stories, or he's just taken his top off. I liked Oliver's opening, by the way, where he aped this Charlo Egan, so it means that the phonetic alphabet has slightly changed and morphed between now and the year 4000, which is good, as had the names Brett Walton and Kurt Gantry. I think the spelling changed slightly in that just to try and sort of futurize the names, the idea that consonants and vowels might shift slightly and words and spellings might shorten or alter, which is of course the case, because I mean they've altered between 1965 and now, haven't they? Like literally, as the kids say. That's well sick. But I love this. I think this, and John from Film is Fabulous, his favourite stuff about the episode was this stuff, because John's a sort of film buff, and this is very like a sort of rearguard action of two soldiers really up against it, and who probably know that their time is up and they're not going to get out of here, but they're not going to give up until the very last minute, and they're not going to give up without a fight. But it's a real sort of tense situation, and the fact that it's done by Brian Cant from Playaway and Nicholas Courtney, National Treasure, gives it an extra beauty, because that knowledge does not dilute the power of the scene, and that makes it extra special. So here are the Technics, who got a photo call all of themselves. Most of them, I think, were already bald. This guy wasn't. There's a couple of pictures of a couple of one of them having their hair cut, and I think you do get a bit of extra money for having a special haircut if you are a walk-on. And in fact, if you have to have something done to your hair, if you're anything, you do get a payment. Here's Lisanne and Roald, Philip Anthony and Pamela Greer. We had no idea what they looked like. I mean, we knew what they looked like because Philip Anthony was still acting until not that long ago. He only died 2 or 3 years ago. And he was in the recent Day of the Triffids with Eddie Izzard and Vanessa Redgrave and Brian Cox and Dougray Scott, and had a decent part in it. So he had a long old career, Philip Anthony. He pops up in everything. But he only did one episode of Doctor Who, and it's this one. And Pamela Greer, now Luantia Greer, named after the place that she was born, was the wife of John Carson, who plays Ambril in Snake Dance. She is still with us. Unfortunately, isn't able to come to the Riverside because she's an older lady now. But I have spoken to her son and sent him a picture, and she's delighted that this is back. So, these two, Liz and Roald, we did not have pictures of because, of course, these were telesnap-free episodes. We didn't have a picture of Michael Guest either, who is a Mongol bandit under makeup in Marco Polo, and the Saxon in episode 1 of the Time Meddler, who Stephen has a tussle with. So not great parts, either of those. And here he is. He'd been an extra as a policeman in Quatermass and the Pit. But we do get to see his face. That wasn't certain. It wasn't necessarily guaranteed. And he's been pretty unlucky, Michael Guest, in terms of visibility. But we get a shot of him there. But on the loose cannon recon, Pamela Greer's got very different hair. In fact, I think it's probably a wig, but I certainly didn't expect her to have that blonde 60s thing going on. I think she's got a shorter hair going on in the loose cannon recon, which is a screen grab for another show and a very reasonable guess. Here we have the mighty Kevin Stoney, who doesn't do an awful lot in this episode, actually, and that's the point. But when I watched this with Day of Armageddon, he starts that episode so in control. He feels like such an established character. It actually caught me up slightly short that he contributes so little to this episode. So immediate is his presence when it's sort of business as it needs to be in episode 2. I love this. We knew this happened. Because you can hear Philip Anthony at some point, but the sort of commentating along that Roald does, I think, is a beautiful addition, because the temptation when you're doing space and the future is to make it all zany and wacky and people talk in spacey ways. So what Terry Nation does, I think, very skillfully here is go, no, we'll still be the same people. And he's very good at toughness stuff, and he's very good at the sort of war kind of stuff. And he has a sort of cynicism that feels terribly grown up when you're a kid. So I love this Roald talking along and then double emphasizing that by saying it's nice to hear his speech again. But I think Philip Anthony acts it really well and sort of raises his eyebrows. And the fact that all this space stuff that's supposed to be quite, futuristic and amazing for us as viewers, well, they're used to it. They take it in their stride, because to them, it's not space stuff. It's just life. And that adds verisimilitude. That makes it feel real and grounded, whilst giving us the comic strippy, spacey stuff that is dazzling us. So it's a very clever way of having your space cake and eating it. And I love that bit. It's one of my favourite bits of the episode. Peter Purvis, when I was sitting with him watching it, really liked that bit as well. He laughed. He thought that was really clever. And Philip Anthony acts it very well. He had a great career, Philip Anthony. Nothing that dazzled, but was still acting in the 2010s, and did phantom film signings and things like that. But sadly didn't quite make it until this came back. Somebody has suggested from a clip that online that Brian Cant tensing his hand is a sign that he might have been stung by a Varga, but no, I think it's the fact that he's been gripping his gun too tightly. But I love all of this stuff. I'm a real sucker. I was brought up on sort of commando comics and war films, and the way I want to go is to sacrifice myself bravely for the greater good. So this is right up my street. And we never knew exactly how this was done. I didn't realise they were quite so close to each other. And I feel somebody like my brother would say, well, he could overpower him if he wants to, but that's not actually the point. Yes, he could, but they both really know that Kurt Gantry is right. And I don't know if I like the fact that when he says good luck, Brett doesn't sort of smile or go, yeah, all right, mate, or good luck yourself. This is a tough world. This is a dirty world. This is where we don't say stuff to each other because some of the stuff's just better left unsaid. And it's this is the universe that the Space Museum was in, not that long ago. And I think it's John Wiles, Donald Tosh, and Terry Nation kind of creating a sort of tonal shift in Doctor. I mean, this does echo the sort of stuff that Nation puts into Dalek Invasion of Earth as well. He likes the sort of warlike iconography and those sorts of stock characters and situations, but they do seem rather fresh and grown up and exciting in Doctor Who, particularly 60s Doctor Who, which can be a bit stranger or wackier or more just sort of comforting. Of course, we know this clip. I'm actually watching it in worse quality than I've ever watched it because we have the tidied up film of this, and one of the things that we were anticipating was just how different is Brian Cant's beard, because there was a memo saying his beard on film is different to his facial hair in the studio, and I guess it is, but it's no more jarring, I think, than the change of medium, because there is a different sort of sheen to the quality of the picture. But yeah, he's got sort of boot polish stubble on in the studio, and he's got a stuck-on beard on film. So somebody really wasn't paying attention. The script supervisor, as it was, there was no really such thing in those days. But yeah, you'd have somebody's head for that. But it was, and that close-up we certainly didn't appreciate. And that was one of the things I knew was going to happen, because John Franklin said, there's a scene with a guy with an electrocuted, burnt face or whatever. So I knew that was going to happen before I got it. I didn't notice this bit when I first watched it. I didn't notice this bit that Nicholas Courtney does some real sort of I'm screwed acting until I was actually in the cinema watching it with Peter. So I'd seen it a good 2 or 3 times, because I guess I was either looking elsewhere, or maybe I was still focusing my brain on the fact that we got that close-up of Brian Cant with his mouth open, dead, that I kind of didn't take that in. But it's a moment that's very Camfield-y, where his actor doesn't just go, my thing's not working. It's like, my thing's not working, and I'm Fucked, which is the real impression that we get. So the stakes just feel a little bit higher. It's a little bit grimmer. It's a little bit tougher. And here we have Katerina, who I haven't talked about yet. I think, I really hope, because she didn't get a great press when Day of Armageddon came back. I remember Steve Roberts, and who'd seen it before the rest of us, so even before we saw it, said, Katerina's a bit naff. And she doesn't do an awful lot in Day of Armageddon. I think she does weirdly kind of float through the episodes. She's slightly detached, but that to me is sort of thematically apposite, because she is transitioning from one world to the next. She is in a sort of limbo between her life as she knew it and the death that we know is to come. We do as fans watching now. So I think it kind of works, and she has a really hard task, because she's the person from another time who doesn't know anything. So her sort of default mood has to be bewildered. But I think she does it really charmingly. I think she has a beautiful, soulful energy about her, and I really want the fact that we now have this run of 3 episodes, Katerina's reputation to soar, because she deserves it too. Hartnell is so good in these episodes. One of my jobs was to suggest clips to go online, because the BBC didn't get the whole episodes. And I suggested this one, partially because it's nice to have Nicholas Courtney, but also because Hartnell's acting is so good in that scene. And we did have the film of the shot of the city isn't that great, is it? It's just a couple of blinking lights. I think we could have reasonably expected it to be a model or something, but he's gone for something slightly more abstract. And we always had that, because of course we always had the film for, they said, well, not always, but for as long as a lot of us can remember, we've had the film. No, well, actually not for that long. Let's not get into the details. For ages we didn't know about the film, but anyway, it's been around for a while, and those blinking lights were amongst it. That's a wig she's wearing. She reminds me of a regular at my comedy club, actually, who is a delightful woman, Katerina, just sort of facially. But I think that's a wig, isn't it, that Adrian Hill's wearing, and her spotlight photos have her with short hair. She didn't actually have that much of a screen career, Adrian Hill, but we have reached out to her family, who are coming to the Riverside screening, which is lovely, and I think it's a really beautiful thing for them. And I think that's to the credit of this whole endeavour, is that we have always had our eyes on who this stuff will be meaningful to beyond the fans. And the fan reaction has been great, apart from, the odd loon, but that's okay. Nicholas Courtney in the TARDIS, the Brigadier in the TARDIS, way before that famous reaction he gives in The Three Doctors. And I think things like this, which, there is a sort of, to use a phrase, indefinable magic about seeing Nicholas Courtney not only as not the Brigadier, and we've already had that because we do have episode 2, so we know about Brett Vian, but to see him in the TARDIS, it just seems like a melding of two things we absolutely love and are really familiar with, but with visuals and a feeling and an atmosphere that's slightly different. So it seems like such an odd and yet strangely comfortingly familiar melange, this, of the TARDIS 60s TARDIS roundels, Nicholas Courtney in black and white, looking all, and he's great in this. I love him as Brett Vine. That was the moment I loved the most when I watched this the first time, because William Hartnell's wig is all akimbo and skew-if because he's obviously been roughed up by Brett Vian, and I love the fact that he just walks up and his hair's everywhere. It is a bit of a shock, though, that and I bet it will be worse when it's been tarted up. His wig line is absolutely visible. And he's got and it's brilliant. He's got a line about brain versus brawn that he fluffs, and instead of carrying on, because you don't have to do brain and brawn in a particular order, but instead of carrying on, he starts again, so really undermines his own point about being more brainy than brawny. And he does that. There's a few key lines, actually, in these first 3 episodes where the Doctor is having to assert that he is in control and cleverer than everybody, and Hartnell manages to muck them all up. But that's not to underestimate him, because I think, look at the way he acts with his eyes. I think he's absolutely phenomenal in these episodes, and I don't mind the fluffs. I wouldn't have drawn attention to them were it not for the fact that they all happen at moments that they shouldn't. And Stephen with the spanner as well. We didn't know how he knocked out Brett, or I certainly didn't. And it was with a spanner. Where does the spanner come from? Nowhere. We don't have Chekhov's spanner. It's a spanner we had to give to Chekhov after the event. I love the way that Camfield choreographs and shoots the Daleks as well. His filming of the Daleks is brilliant. Douglas Camfield, the director, is not just the master of tense, taut atmosphere. His camera work, the way that his cameras move. These studios aren't very big. And the way that these episodes are paced. I say the studios aren't big. That Space Center set looks absolutely massive, doesn't it? And it's a sort of cliche to acknowledge the names we know and love, Camfield, Cusick. But Ray Cusick's work on this is brilliant. This doesn't feel cramped at all. This TARDIS set feels rather huge too. She's slightly scuppered by her lines, I think, sometimes, Katerina, and that she has to sort of just stick out, calm, you must be calm, and what is it, and all of that. But she, as I say, she gives them a sort of floaty innocence that I rather like, and she's so sort of intent on Hartnell. Look how she sort of holds him in her eyes, because she sees in him the guidance that she needs, and she's so guileless. I love Katerina. I think she's great. I think she's got, look at the way that she smiles so beautifully. She's so sweet. TARDIS Rounder's got a bit of a tear in it, look. But Courtney, I think, is really good at this tough guy stuff. He's very different to the Brigadier, isn't he? Oh, that's one of those plants that gets burnt in the Bernie scene in episode 2. I did, after I'd watched these 2 episodes twice, I think. I then watched the three in a row to get a feel of the Daleks' master plan unfolding, which we can do now. Here's Mark Corey's skeleton. Now, has he been there a long time? I was wondering, does that mean he's decayed? That Mission to the Unknown was ages ago, or is it that he's been eaten by animals? I think I've decided he was eaten by animals, because it takes a long time to become a skeleton. And we get a tape. Here we go. So we see Mark Corey, and we get a tape. Now, we'd seen this, but it's a brilliant shot. I remember seeing this clip on Resistance is Useless, a Clips documentary that was shown in the 90s before a repeat season, and going, oh, that's from Dalek's Master Plan. But it's an absolutely exceptional model, and I like the way that it spins bits of it spin in different ways as it's going down. That's 3 different directions going on at the same time. I love that shot through that set. That's magnificent. And then it ends up on I did a Hartnell there. That's magnificent. You got the key word wrong, Toby, just as the big close-up came. So I did a Hartnell. But I love that and the way that he shouts Daleks. Although Nick Briggs did just say in a video that I saw that I passed on to Phantom, Film is Fabulous. Won't they have heard him when he said that? It hadn't occurred to me, and now I'm not going to be able to unsee and unhear that. I always like the 60s TARDIS when it's got a chair we haven't seen, or an ornament, or a hat stand or something. And this is, of course, the magnetic chair, which none of us knew what it looked like. And, of course, it's shaped like a magnet. And then Gav Rymel, I think, pointed out on our little WhatsApp group that we have, well, it's there in the set design. It's a sort of horseshoe shape. But I don't think any of us had ever put two together and gone, oh, it's a magnetic chair. It's shaped like a magnet. But there it is in all its glory. Because, of course, not having photo reference or telesnaps, there's so many mysteries. So it's not just that we can see episodes anew, which is such a pleasure, isn't it? Such a privilege. What am I doing? I'm talking over a missing episode of Doctor Who. Missing no more, but do you know what I mean? That until 6 weeks ago, if anybody had said you'd want to be chatting through something, I'd be going, no, I want to shut all the doors, shut all the walls, and dispel any sound and distractions, because I'm soaking up every single element of this. He got very frustrated with her, didn't he? Very cross, and I hate to see somebody die of stupidity, and that they are all a bit short with her, but it's a good dynamic. But he dominates this episode, doesn't he, Courtney? He's and that's a model shot. Now, we know that's a model because Gav Rymel spotted the Dalek in the jungle as a miniature in a photo that he'd seen of Dalek's master plan. But I don't think you'd necessarily know from seeing that shot, but it just goes to show the attention to detail, because that model was put together for that brief moment. Lovely reveal of Marvick Chen, starting from his legs and going up, and here he is. It's Kevin Stoney. What a brilliant actor he is. And the reason we don't see him much in this is because that's essentially one of the cliffhangers, isn't it? And this second cliffhanger feels, because we've had the fade to black, feels like a sort of coda as opposed to a continuation of the drama. And I think in terms of pacing or structure, you would probably now want to have something in between these two scenes. But then again, you want Maverick Chen's reveal to come near the end. There's the Doctor look avoiding the Varga plant, so we don't see those in the reprise. But this episode ending sort of comes out a little bit of the blue, because this just seems like a little additional scene after the reveal of Chen, which is structurally quite weird because it comes so close to the end of the episode that you have that sort of climax. Oh, look, the traitor is Marvick Chen. And then, oh, we've got this other little scene in order to give us our cliffhanger. I think that's quite unusual. I'm not complaining about it, but it feels, in terms of the tempo of the piece, it feels like a slight sort of unusual judder. And of course, we didn't see Lisanne and Roald again after that. Lisanne comes back in episode 4, but that's it for Roald. That's it for the interviewer. We don't see that many technics ever again. That's the most of the. So they don't do an awful lot, considering they got a photo shoot, and seeing as they're the sort of they're totemic of the year 4000. But what a brilliant episode that is. The only thing I would say that I think sticks out as being slightly dubious about it in terms of its effectiveness is the fact is that Lisanne and Roald do a little bit of that. Oh yes, Mark Corey, that space agent who went missing a few months ago, which they wouldn't have said to each other in that way. And then the fact that they miss the mayday from their two spacefarers on a dangerous mission looking for a man who might have been killed in horrible circumstances, because the only way you find out about it is if you watch a flashing light. And if you think you've half seen the flashing light, if it stopped flashing, you don't go, shall we just check? But, it's 1965, and I'll forgive it that, because everything else I think is magnificent, and I think so many aspects of it are firing on more cylinders than it necessarily we might necessarily have expected that it might. I think it's a really strong episode. So what's my favourite thing? Well, all sorts. Hartnell is brilliant. I think the way that he acts to camera, I think the fact that Camfield knows to give him close-ups. Hartnell is so good, and I think we sometimes take these early Doctors... Well, I think I sometimes do, because I'm so looking for what's fresh about this episode, that episode, that the stuff that's always there is easy to take for granted. I love Katerina, and I really hope this rehabilitates her in the eyes of fandom. I think she's got a beautiful energy. I adore the war feel, the rearguard action, the tenseness of the performances of Brian Canton, Nicholas Courtney, especially, as they're two people who you wouldn't normally associate. If it had been, I don't know, John Challis and George Sewell or something like that, you'd go, yeah, these are hard-bitten actors playing hard-bitten roles. But the fact it's the guy from Playaway and our lovely Nicholas Courtney, and yet it's totally convincing, and they're really good. But it means that we can watch it with two different eyes and get two completely different experiences. One, a genuine, my God, this is tense and this is really well done. And two, I love these guys. They make me feel happy and warm and in touch with my inner child. I think the set design is brilliant. I think that Space Center set is amazing, and it allows that camera work to happen. But Camfield's camera work is so good. I love the Daleks. I think that's brilliant. I love Hartnell's skew-if hair. Douglas Camfield is definitely the star of these two episodes, across the experience of both of them. He does not put a foot wrong. He keeps the camera moving, keeps it tense. The way he choreographs the Daleks, there's some stuff in Devil's Planet that is extraordinary. I love Ray Cusick's set design. I love the fact we see the Varga plants, which we don't see in the reprise, as I said. I love seeing Nicholas Courtney in the TARDIS. I love the fact that these pictures show us visuals that we could not have dreamed of, because we do not have the hints from the telesnaps. We do have some photos, but not many. We didn't know what some of those characters looked like, so that's an extra aspect of this find. But I think my heart lies... Oh, and I love Roald's cynicism. I love him parroting Marvek Chen's speech, and then the way that Philip Anthony raises his eyes and doesn't give it too much, he judges it just right. It's a lovely little performance. I think he does a really nice job, Philip Anthony, and he's just one of a character actor whose name most people wouldn't be able to conjure, and whose face you might go, I think I've seen him in things, but I don't know what. And yet one of those workers at the coalface for a long time. He had a career that lasted from then right up until the past decade or so, which is believe me, no mean feat. So I really like that sort of Greek chorus effect that is given by Lisanne and Roald, who just help us get into the world of the year 4000. And I love that. I love the fact that Terry Nation has gone, let's try and do some science fiction like it is in the comic strips with special security agents. And it's not an approach that Doctor Who has really done up to this point, and I don't think sort of almost does enough. I like the sort of spacey, Flash Gordon-y, futuristic-y, comic strippy. I do like... I don't really read graphic novels or comics, but I like the idea of Doctor Who trying to be a bit comic strippy with its futuristicness. And this is a rare, I think, occurrence of that. And I buy this world with its newscasts. I love Marvik Chen saying, I'm going on holiday and I'm somewhere where I can get away from interviewers. Again, it's just a little sort of slightly adulty, cynically flavour that it gives something that could just be, kiddie space adventure, but I think it lends it a certain tone that is invigorating and enjoyable. So, but I think I'm going to go for my first love when I first saw this episode, just because I think it's emblematic of the surprises that are always in store for us when we watch these things, and the things we can't anticipate, no matter how much we would. And it's something that's not ever commented upon in the whole of the episode. And it needn't be there, but the art lies in the fact that it is. I'm going to choose my favourite thing as being Hartnell's skewiff hair after he has been dusted up by Brett Vian. And, you know, the last time we see him prior to that is he's got a gun to his head and Brett Vian's going, "You're going to give me that key." And Hartnell does a brilliant close face-up acting. And then the next time we see him, he's trudging through the jungle and his hair's all over the shop. I love that. It's just a quiet bit of a brilliant, witty moment. So let me now dig out the clips that I've got from my two wonderful contributors, Tim Burrows, Missing Episodes podcast, check it out, and Oliver Crocker, a writer enthusiast, both of them absolutely great guys. And that's been another thing of this, actually, is that, you know, fandom can have its schisms and people are always quite often rude to each other online and all that sort of thing. I experience, and I never had I didn't really have proper Doctor Who fan friends for almost all of my childhood. In my teenage years, then I did have some for a short time. I got involved with the group, but then I sort of moved away and went to university. So again, I was kind of on my own again, and I didn't really have Doctor Who fan friends. I didn't seek them out. I didn't really want to be part of fandom. It didn't bother me. I enjoyed it sort of all on under my own steam. I didn't have any ambition really I didn't feel I needed that. And then having done my Doctor Who scarf, I got to know a lot of Doctor Who fans and be involved in various things, and it opened up a whole new world to me, which was a very pleasant surprise. But then you get used to it, or you get cynical about it, or you view it in different ways. And this was a reminder of the fact that Oliver, Tim and Gavin, all very different guys, all very good at what they do, all very great contributors to the worlds of Doctor Who. But that day, we were four mates who wouldn't have known each other were it not for Doctor Who, who'd all got together to do this special Doctor Who thing, and I wouldn't have had it any other way to experience that with those four guys. It wouldn't have been the same to do it without them. I was really happy that I was able to experience that. Obviously, I had the joy of sitting bang next to Peter Purvis with no one around us. Everyone else was at the back, and watch those two episodes. But to experience that day, to have the build-up on a WhatsApp group, myself, Tim and Gavin, but then all of us there on the day, and then afterwards as we decompressed and talked to each other about what it was we'd just done, it was very, very special. And as I say, I don't think I'd have it any other way. So let's continue that experience by digging out their thoughts of what happened in The Nightmare Begins, and what each of their favourite things were. So let's go to Tim first.
So, episode 1, The Nightmare Begins. Highlights for me are so many because it's all new and exciting. My favourite moment, frankly, is the countdown clock on the film, to show you that this thing is coming alive from history, and that wonderful theme tune, and then you can't believe your eyes as you close in on Stephen's face, and this thing is back from oblivion. But you don't want to hear about the countdown clock. You want to hear more about the episode. So, oh gosh, so much to enjoy here. Lots of new visuals that I could never imagine. You know, Brett Vian in the TARDIS. I was really struck by William Hartnell in this. He gets some great close-ups. He obviously knows he's getting close-ups, and that bit where he's talking to himself in the jungle, looking gaunt and suave, and then Brett Vian's gun in his neck. That looks really, really good. And isn't it wonderful to see him interacting with Katerina in the same tender way that he treated Susan and then Vicky. And of course, Hartnell gives us the first of 3 magnificent wig mishaps. So when he's been roughed up by Brett and he's got that serial B hair, wowee, that was magical and reminiscent of his Dead Planet hair, you know. But what's really great about this episode is the atmosphere. You can cut it with a knife. It's 20 odd minutes of atmosphere and exposition, but yeah, gosh. And what I think really drives home the fact that Camfield knows what he's doing and he's wanting to scare the kids is that one shot where he's conspired with Brian Cant to burn an image into the kids' memories, and that's the close-up of the burnt face and Brian Cant contorting his face into that extraordinary, horrible expression. So I think that's the one that sticks with me, because it would have stuck in the minds of the kids, and it really makes the Daleks into the threat that we want them to be. They're horrible. So my top moment from The Nightmare Begins is Brian Cant's death face.
Oh yes, I like Brian Cant's death face as well. Isn't it funny how and he's got an aptitude for that, hasn't he, Camfield? Because you get the blackened Sergeant Arnold death face in The Web of Fear, and it is those little moments of violence or terror that can lift an episode. I'm sure I've said this before. The Faceless Ones episode 1, when I first saw it, was a bootleg, and it was the version, because we have two versions of the Faceless Ones episode 1. We have two versions of that episode, and the version I saw was the Australian one, which was cut, so the death of Inspector Gascoigne isn't there. Spencer just points at him, and then he's on the floor, and it jumps about a bit when they're getting the chameleon out of his little cupboard and taking him down the steps. And the reason it jumps, and when they inject him as well, and the reason it jumps is because in all of those moments you see his slightly sort of burnt and mutilated hands. Tiny moments, just seconds missing, but without them the episode is a little bit pedestrian and a little bit disjointed. With them, it's suddenly spooky and unsettling, and the reinsertion of those, or the copy of that episode that doesn't have those bits chopped out, is a much more rewarding experience. Suddenly that whole episode in the setting of the airport is not just a sort of murder mystery in the airport thing. It's got a little bit of suggested body horror and of something disturbing beneath the surface, more so than just the fact that the captain's a bit cold and scary and a man gets zapped. It's something a little bit more, that those burnt hands are sort of a parody of the human form, which just makes things just seem like a little bit as if something's askew and not right. And it's just those very occasional moments, and I think you don't have to have the close-up of Brian Cant's dead face, but because you do, it suddenly says we're in a world, in a universe that is, where nasty things happen and you're going to see them. And we know from the Australian censors and the notes that the Australian censors most, that there are things like the close-up of the dead Trantis in Volcano, where I think he's basically bubble bath, and Chen's shocked reaction to that. There are just going to be moments like that where the actors or a moment are there for Douglas Camfield to just push the envelope a little further than we might ordinarily go in Doctor Who, where sometimes people just clutch their chests and fall over. The reaction of other people gives us a spook, but also those visuals as well that are there designed to shock. So that's a very good choice from Tim, and a very, it's the sort of stuff that I guess as a kid would be my absolute thing to be looking for. So yes, good choice. Let us see what Oliver Crocker is going to choose.
Someone like Gav is such a brilliant historian of the sets, and we were talking the night before about parts of the set that there were no reference photos of. I think you and I are similar in that it's performance things that really tick our boxes over, visual effects, which of course we appreciate. I appreciate all the elements of a production, and these are really, really, really great examples of Doctor Who. I loved William Hartnell's wig all messed up as if he's had an off-camera skirmish with Nick Courtney's Brett Vian in the woods. You know, that was just magic to see that. I think Hartnell's really great in these. It's a shame he has the fluffs, which, you know, we all know why. But it doesn't detract from the fact he gives it absolutely everything. He's charming, he's powerful. He's really, really good in these. Everyone's really, really good in these. I was really struck by Adrian Hill's performance. There's a playful quality to her. There's a lot going on behind those eyes, and I think Douglas Camfield gave her some really nice coverage in The Nightmare Begins. Douglas Camfield is just... what a director. I think this is some of his finest work, and I don't think I'm just saying that because we've gone all these years without seeing it. I really think this is a slick production. And I know Peter was saying, oh, I barely had anything to do with that, but the moment where he's looking up at the monitor and he sees the doctor on there and he's working it all out. He's working out that there's an intruder in the TARDIS and he needs to do something about it. He was doing a lot there with no lines. He's so much a better actor than he gives himself credit for. But my favourite moment in The Nightmare Begins, and it's a tiny little performance choice, is by Nicholas Courtney. After Brett Vian trips in the jungle and he lands on his communicator, he damages it, and there's this really surprisingly moving moment where he crouches over this broken communicator, his last hope of reaching contact and getting help. And he looks like he's about to break down, and he just gently punches the top of the communicator with an air of resignation. And it's that tiny little moment that you'd have just never known you were going to see. A lovely performance touch by one of Doctor Who's all-time greats in his first appearance. That, amongst many special moments of The Nightmare Begins, would be my favourite. Thank you, Film is Fabulous. Thank you, Toby Haydock.
Oh, yeah, that's another one. But that's the thing that I noticed a bit later. So that was one of my things I came back to. As I mentioned, I didn't really notice it the first time around. And that's not because it was not effective. I think I'd got my mind on Tim's. So it's interesting how close they are to each other in terms of in proximity in the episode. But it's again, it's a subtle moment. They're both Camfield, if not trademarks, certainly tools of his trade that he employs to great effect more than once. But that doesn't make them anything. That doesn't make them too familiar in this context. In fact, they are so that they have the concurrently sort of familiar and reassuring that this is a man of great quality, but also refreshing and surprising because we don't expect them. Although, as I say, I'd expected Cat's face because that was something that John had noticed, and he did say burnt face, even though actually I'm not sure it is. I think he's got the grimy makeup on still in the beard, but I don't think they've applied any post-death makeup to him, or have they? Maybe that's something I'll spot next time I watch it, because these are gifts that keep on giving. And I think the censors had pointed it out as being a close-up of a burnt face as well. So I think we sort of knew it was there, but that doesn't make a difference. It still surprises you. So they're both good individual. Isn't it interesting? Because I chose a funny one, but we all chose tiny wee moments in an episode that is of consist. It's not that we're having to mine. It's not that we're trepanning to find a bit of gold in a whole heap of slurry. I think we all acknowledge that these episodes are absolutely magnificent, and that there's something about them from start to finish, just in terms of their overall quality and presentation and atmosphere. And I think any of us would have chosen Douglas Camfield, any of us would have chosen Ray Cusick, any of us would have chosen William Hartnell, but we've all decided to go for a tiny little moment, I think, to illustrate that this episode is chock full of moments of varying length and contributions of varying size that can all be summed up by actually just a split second that just says, this is amazing. And there are so many bits we all could have, we all three of us could have chosen. So there we go. That's just three tiny moments in 25 minutes less than of absolutely brilliant Doctor Who that none of us could see, none of us could imagine seeing, and I'm sure we all hoped. But even when we hoped about missing episodes, I didn't have Nightmare Begins on my radar. There's been rumours of other Master Plan episodes, haven't there, because of Blue Peter and that. But I'd never really heard much talk of Nightmare Begins. It certainly wasn't a, oh yeah, right, when I was told it was a, you're absolutely kidding, and we can now watch the first 3 in one go. Isn't that incredible? So, The Nightmare Begins, and it can now begin at the touch of a button on iPlayer. The people who made this couldn't have conceived, one, that its loss would be something that made people's hearts ache, 2, that its return would amaze people, and 3, that upon its return it would be available using technology that they could not even have dreamed of, not even in the science fiction that they were making. But it's science fiction that has lasted, that has endured, because all of those brilliant people, so many of whom are no longer with us, have put in work that is just so special. So special and is more than a sum of its parts. We've tried to look here at individual moments to try and say what the best things are. Actually, the best thing about this is beyond what it actually is that it's something that that is just so special. This whole situation is almost impossible to describe for how brilliant it is. It means more to us just than the return of something we hadn't been able to see. It's all wrapped up in our thoughts about the show, about its history, about our engagement with it as fans and as people, as what it means to us as children that we were and the adults that we are, and what it means to the people who were in it and what those people mean to us, not just in terms of the work that they did, but what they represent. It's the world is grim at the moment. There are nightmares beginning everywhere we look, every time we turn on the news, and it's this disposable piece of entertainment. I tell you what, it has given me so much pleasure over the past 6 weeks, and I know it's going to give everybody, well, it already has, it's had tongues wagging just in anticipation, but I know that everybody is going to just be so bowled over and so pleased and so happy that it's back. So yeah, isn't that good? Well, thank you for listening. We'll be back for Devil's Planet, which I know that you'll have watched by the time you listen to this, because you're not going to watch The Nightmare Begins then listen to this before you watch Devil's Planet. That would be taking self-denial to almost perverse levels. But nonetheless, I am gonna break them up into 2 separate installments. But I hope you've enjoyed this journey. Hopefully, the first commentary of your actual Nightmare Begins that you've been able to avail yourself of, and I am in. I'm in no doubt as to the privilege that I have been accorded and how lucky and fortunate and blessed I am. So I'd like to acknowledge that too. Thanks to Tim and to Oliver, and of course to Film is Fabulous for finding this episode, and thanks to you for listening. And why not take a trip with me to the Devil's Planet next time on Happy Times and Places, which are today just a little bit extra happy. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydoke, and my special guests this time around, Oliver Crocker, who you can find online. He's on Instagram at Oliver Crocker Author, on Twitter at Oliver Crocker, and he's a ghostwriter and historian, and his books and broadcasts will be of great interest to you. And then there's Tim Burrows, who can be found on Twitter at Doctor Who Podcasters, at DR Who Podcasters. Do check out his Missing Episodes podcast. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you like this, well, you'll love that. And of course, let's be mindful of the work of Film is Fabulous, who you can see at filmisfabulous.org.uk, and you can donate to enable them to continue doing their amazing work, which has resulted in the return of these 2 episodes of Doctor Who. Thanks to the patrons of these podcasts, and to Dylan Patterson, artwork, and Dave Gates, music. Yes, Patreon, that is how these podcasts happen. And that is why they remain ad-free, because there are lovely people who go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock and pay as little as £3 a month for most of the goodies that you get. All of the content is available at £3 a month. There are a couple of little trinkets that take you into the higher tiers if you so desire, but it's pretty egalitarian. I just want people to pay what they can afford and what they're prepared to, and I do not take it for granted that people send their hard-earned cash in my direction, and as a result I try and put out 3 releases a week, give you advance releases of all my podcasts, exclusive behind-the-scene looks at some of the DVD and special features and extras that I do, interviews from my archive, and all sorts of other stuff, bits of my stand-up comedy, but usually 3 releases a week, which is not a bad rate for £3 a month, or a little bit more if you can do a little bit more, at patreon.com/Toby Haydock. And you can also donate at Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock, if you would just like to do the odd one-off bit of support for my output. But it doesn't have to be financial, and I know that times are trying in that regard, but a little bit of your time would be all it costs you to go to any of the areas where you can get these podcasts: Patreon, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. I've even got a YouTube channel, and a like, a subscribe, a 5-star review where you can, a few lines saying what you like about these, and just telling your friends and going on social media and saying nice things really, really helps to separate my endeavours from those of all the other brilliant people out there. No, I'm not going to say other brilliant people, because that would suggest I think I'm brilliant, but from all the people out there who contribute to the vast amount of Doctor Who content that there is online. But of course, I'd like you to listen to mine especially. I'm on social media at Haydock Podcasts and at Toby Haydock on Twitter/X. I'm on Instagram. That's where I do most of my stuff now, at toby.haydock. I have a Facebook page where you can see what I'm up to. And I also have a YouTube channel I'd love you to subscribe to. And my comedy club is also online at Excess Malarkey that's on Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky too. It's hard to keep up, isn't it? But you can find me because I've got a stupid name, so it's very difficult to get me mixed up with somebody else. And so do all of that to the extent that you're prepared to do, and the extent that you engage with this very bizarre online world that nobody dreamed would be happening in the year 4000, let alone 2026. Well, there we go. I'm against the wire with this, really, because there's quite a lot to do, and I'm still building up to the weekend where I want to write a nice intro and do something really proper for the presentation of these episodes, which are going to be unfurled in front of a viewing public. I mean, they'll already have been on iPlayer. I wonder how many of the people coming to the Riverside will hold off to watch it as a communal experience. I like to think that maybe I would. I didn't get the download of Rose when that came out a week before, but I'm not sure I'd have been able to resist temptation. I think I'd have been up at 6 on Good Friday to watch them as soon as possible, because there's a joy to watching, and the communal experience is different, and it doesn't have to be the first time. So maybe I would get them in beforehand. But either way, however anybody enjoys these episodes, what a thrill, isn't it? And what a joyous outpouring there has been, and how full of excitement does that make us? And I'm so lucky to have been a part of it, and I hope you've enjoyed me sharing that with you. It's been a privilege to do, and as I say, I promise I never lose sight of how lucky I've been in this equation. It does mean I've taken I've put a lot of hours in, though. I have to say, I have put a lot of hours in. I am absolutely shattered, and it's the end of the tax year. I've got things to do, but I've just watched The Nightmare Begins for about the 8th time and talked all the way through it. Oh, brave new world that has such nightmares in it.